Point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms. Greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind, and greed, you mark my words, will not only save Teldar paper, but that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA. Thank you very much.
I want you to understand something very clearly. When someone asks you in this country, are you a citizen of the United States? What you think they are asking you is, are you lawfully in this country? Are you lawfully here to do business and be here? That's not what they are asking you. The country is called America. America is the name of the country. But in the 1860s, the late 1860s, a group of men got together and incorporated a privately owned company. Anyone, you see, can incorporate a privately owned company, and a group of men did exactly that. They incorporated a company privately, and they called the company the United States Corporation according to corporate law. And anyone who has a corporation of business knows that according to corporate law, all corporations must have a president. That's the law, and it must have a vice president, and it must have a secretary of treasury. That's corporate law. So the corporation had to have a president and a vice president. Today, when you see the yearly State of the Union address, and when you see the president come out and the Speaker of the House come out, they are essentially holding an annual meeting for the corporation. Regarding the President of the United States, everybody in this country thinks he's the President of America. America doesn't have a president. This is a corporate term used in business. The United States Corporation is a privately owned company, and it's a 10-mile square that it operates in called the District of Columbia. Columbia simply means universal, which also means Catholic. When you start tracing back the ownership of the corporation, called the United States Privately Owned Corporation, then you begin to see that if you say that you are a citizen of the United States, what you're saying lawfully is that you are an employee of a foreign corporation under international maritime law. You are an employee of a privately owned company. Therefore, if you are living in any state such as California, and you're making money here, then what you are doing, quite literally, is moonlighting, because you are already working for, and are an employee of a privately owned company called the United States Corporation, but you are earning money in California. Therefore, you are a franchisee of a foreign corporation under maritime law. It's like opening up a McDonald's here. You can open up a McDonald's, but you're not the boss of McDonald's. The McDonald's Corporation is the boss. They tell you what you can sell and what you can't sell and how much it is going to be, and they call the shots. You can merely be a franchisee operating under their jurisdiction. So consequently, each one of us who call ourselves a citizen of the United States is, in point of fact, a franchisee of a foreign corporation. And once a year, you have to pay what is referred to as a California franchise tax. Let me explain something to you. There are two kinds of law on the earth: Roman civil law and maritime admiralty law. Roman civil law comes from the word civil or civili in Latin, meaning the people of the Illies, or the people of the gods. Civil law is referred to as the law of the land. But there is a higher law that governs the whole earth. There's a higher law that operates on the earth, and it has nothing to do with the civil law of any country, because civil laws are different in every country. You can do things in Africa that you can't do in Spain. You could do things here in America you can't do in France, because the people's law, the law of the land, is different according to the culture. This governing law is called maritime admiralty law. But when you talk about maritime admiralty law, what you're talking about is the law of water. The law of banks or banking law is called Maritime Admiralty Law. And, this is why, incidentally, the Statue of Liberty could not be put on land in this country. It had to be put in a port, had to be put in water. Why? Because it's not the Statue of Freedom. It's a Statue of Liberty. Liberty is what a sailor gets when you pull into port. Because the admiral gives the captain on board the ship ownership of your body. You ask permission to leave, and if he lets you, which he is most likely not going to. But if he allows you to leave, you have the liberty to leave. You don't have freedom, and as long as you call yourself a United States citizen, you are an employee of a foreign corporation incorporated on the international law under Maritime Admiralty Law. And consequently, you are a franchisee of a foreign corporation. They own you. Now let me show you how they own you. When a ship pulls into port, for example, from Japan and brings, let's say, $800 million worth of goods, the first thing the captain has to do is fill out a document to give to the port authority. This is called the Certificate of Manifest. He has to give them a certificate showing how much each item costs and the specifications of each item. Exactly what are you bringing into this country? How much is it going to cost our banks? How much are we going to have to pay for this? And so it's business that comes in on water, it's Maritime Admiralty Banking Law. And so therefore, each item has to have a certificate of manifest for the ship when it pulls into port and parks. The spot where it parks or docks is called the berthing of a ship. The ship sits in its berth. When you were born, your mother's water broke. And when your mother's water broke, you came out. And therefore you are a Maritime Admiralty product under international law. You and I are products under international maritime banking law. You are a product because you came out of your mother's water, and therefore you have to have a certificate of manifest known as your birth certificate. And the birth certificate has to be signed by the doc. And consequently, if you go to a store and you buy something that's too large to take home, they'll bring it to you. And so they will tell you what time they're going to deliver the product. That's why your mother was in a delivery room. She was delivering a product under international law. Now, when you get the birth certificate, that certificate is a Maritime Admiralty certificate that shows you are a human resource in the corporation called the United States. They went to your mother and asked her, would you donate this body to us as collateral for a loan because each birth certificate is worth a certain amount of money? When this system first started in 1833, the value of each birth was around $630,000 on the International Stock Exchange. You are the stock, specifically, livestock. And your birth certificate today is on the stock market. If you look on the back of your social security card, you'll see numbers in red. Anytime you see red numbers, they represent your blood. If you turn it on the other side, you'll see it in blue. Blue is Maritime Admiralty, the navy blue, and so, consequently, you are a product that was bought. On the birth certificate, if you look down on the bottom right where your mother signed, before, it didn't say mother or parent. It said informant, because your mother was informing on you under maritime law. She was telling the corporation that she was delivering a new product to them, and here is the certificate of birth, and that was sent to Washington, D.C. They took that birth certificate, and what happened? Let me go back and explain that in the 1860s, when this privately owned company was incorporated, it started growing rapidly. And when any corporation grows too fast, it starts getting out of balance. It started becoming very successful, and they wanted to move out and expand overseas. I'm being very simplistic with this. There's a lot more to it, but I'm giving you the basics. But when the corporation called the United States was founded back in the 1860s, it wanted to move overseas at the turn of the century. And so it started moving into Europe as a hostile takeover they called World War I. World War I was one large corporation called United States trying to take over other major corporations in the world like Germany and France, which are other corporations under this same system. So consequently, the United States was able to be successful in the corporate takeover during World War I. But in the process, they lost so much money. The corporation spent so much money arming and making tanks and bullets to kill people that they won the hostile takeover of a foreign corporation. But this made them bankrupt. Consequently, they were in really serious trouble now because they didn't have money to feed the people at home in the corporation. And now they've taken on new corporations in Europe to be responsible for. So the United States corporation was in very big trouble. They went to Europe and asked the international bankers if they could borrow money. And the international bankers said quite simply, no, you're bankrupt. So what have you got as collateral for a loan? And they came up with the idea that your birth certificate would be worth around $630,000 because the bankers asked, how much can each individual in your country working for your corporation make from the day they are born to the day they die on average? And it came to be about $630,000. So the bankers made a deal with the corporation called United States to credit the United States corporation account in Europe with $630,000 per birth certificate. And this is why today this United States corporation doesn't care about how many people come into this country illegally or unlawfully. They don't care about that. They open up the borders, let everyone in. Why? Because every single person coming across that border is at least worth $1 million now in their corporate bank account. And so that's why the United States is only concerned with undocumented workers. We don't care about people illegally coming into the country, but we don't want undocumented workers because, with documented workers you can cash that in and get that money from the international banks. So consequently, the United States corporation owns you. The corporation owns you and is making money from your life. Something to think about, eh?